Welcome back to Interjections. Inter are through to the round of the 16 in the Champions League after a domination of Monaco yesterday. We're here to break it down for you. I'm your host, Andrew. Mikko, Irfan, and Jay with me. Mikko, I'm sure you're still just over the moon about Lautaro's performance yesterday.
Yes, I am. And I can't wait to talk about those goals and all the hot takes around them. So let's go. I'm ready.
I'm sure Jay will be here to argue how poorly taken they all were. What's up, Jay?
No need for that. I've already discussed how poor those goals were. In the interview section, we have planned for you, fine gentlemen and listeners, with none other than the notorious, legendary Anthony of Inter Worldwide, coming soon.
We heard our listener feedback. Our listener feedback was that they wanted better quality content from Australians. So we said, okay, let's go and get Anthony back on the podcast. Irfan, how are you doing?
Doing well. Reveling in a Asllani-inspired European conquest, thanks to some clutch goals from El Capitano, who's back. So, doing well.
I don't know what you're talking about, Irfan. Arnautovic and Asllani were the only players who played poorly yesterday. All right, so I want to start by giving full credit to Inzaghi for yesterday's performance because I love what he did yesterday. There were a lot of lineups released over the weekend, but before the Monaco match that was showing heavy rotation. And I much prefer the approach he ended up taking, which was he went for the kill. He started his best 11, and we had a job to do. And going out there with our best lineup, going out there with some intent was the right approach. We knew we needed a draw. We knew a win would definitely secure our spots in the last 16. And we went out there and we did it. So I give him, he didn't mess around by starting Taremi or Arnautovic, or he didn't get cute by trying to use Zielinski over Mkhitaryan. And it was a tough decision because we have the Milan Derby, obviously, this weekend, and two huge matches in a row. But he did the right thing. He said, forget it. Let's clinch the bye to the last 16. We'll worry about the rest later. And it took care of itself because we didn't mess around. Thuram excels at drawing penalties. He draws yet another penalty. We all had our hearts in our mouths when Lautaro steps up, and I know I was convinced he was going to find a way to miss the penalty. My exact train of thought was first, why is he the one taking this? Followed by, oh great, he's going to miss it. But he proved us wrong and got it past the keeper. And the game was really over 15 minutes later, 10 minutes later, when Thuram draws the last man foul and gets Marisa sent off. We didn't score immediately off of the Thuram sequence, but soon enough thereafter, and game over at that point. So we clinch our UCL objective of getting to the last 16. Now we're sitting around waiting for the results of who we're going to play next. It looks like there's a strong possibility our next opponent is going to be one of Milan or Juve in the Champions League. I don't know if I'm going to be emotionally able to handle that, depending on how this weekend goes, but something to keep an eye on. But we can cross that bridge when we get to it. This might be a hot take, and we need more hot takes on interjections. We don't offer hot takes enough. So I will say that Thuram is my man of the match for yesterday's performance, even though Lautaro scored 3 goals, because he's really the one who put this game to bed. He drew the penalty. We can talk about the merits of that penalty, but he did draw it. Then he drew the last man foul that got Marisa sent off. And like I said, it was game over from that point. He also had a beautiful through ball to DeMarco that DeMarco just failed to slot away. They could not keep up with Thuram all night long. He was just a constant thorn in Monaco's side. He was exceptional. Lautaro and Barella were both excellent as well. Yeah, don't even know where to start with Lautaro. Just some really nice finishes. The penalty, a little unconvincing for me, but doesn't matter. He converted it. He needed to convert a penalty to boost his confidence. And from there, the goals just came together. And like we said, we've got Lautaro in prime form, in last season form, heading into the biggest match of the season so far. And we need this. We need his confidence to be high. And I'm fully expecting him to score against Milan this weekend based on the current form he's in. It's nice to have confidence in Lautaro again. Defensively, we were never really under pressure. De Vrij had a nice game. Everyone had a nice game, really, except for Arnautovic. We can talk about that later if we want. Jay, what do you think of the penalty call, which some fans are dubbing soft, and what did you think of the last man call, which I don't think there's much controversy in, but open to opposing viewpoints?
Monaco robbed. No, I'm kidding. I do think the penalty call was a bit soft. There was a bit of contact from behind, and then I felt like Thuram's legs actually kind of got entangled with the defender's legs. I didn't feel the contact was all that significant, but we got the rub of the green, and the penalty was duly dispatched despite Lautaro's best efforts. Regarding the last man foul, yeah, again, it's one of those where was the contact significant enough to cause a grown man like Thuram to fall down? No, obviously not. But when you are the last man, you can't wrap your hands or arms around the attacker's waist to try and slow his momentum. So it's obviously preventing a clear goal scoring opportunity. And a red was fitting, I think.
Mikko, what were your thoughts on the performance? Were you scared midweek when you saw Inzaghi reportedly going with reserves, and when the news broke he was going with the full strength lineup? What were your reactions?
I'm 100% Inzaghi guy, so I trust what he's doing. I was honestly a bit disappointed that when the latest predictions came that okay, we're gonna go with the full force. Obviously, it's nice to see that, but would have been like kind of funny to see if he would have continued the trend of using the half of his bench in the Champions League matches, no matter what. But yeah, it was somehow it felt from the beginning when the match started. Okay, we got this, and when Lautaro stepped on to take the penalty, usually I also feel a bit of a scare or something that okay, is he gonna miss it? What's gonna happen? Is like a confidence is going to get destroyed? But somehow yesterday I felt that okay, we are like already, was it like minute 2 or something? So it felt from that moment that okay, we really got this match, no matter is there going to be a goal now or not. And yeah, that's what happened when I think the Moisa, he was like a total idiot doing that foul. I don't know if the refs in France are a bit more lenient with this kind of contacts, but it was, to me it was pretty clear, even if it was a bit soft, in a sense that of course he didn't drag Thuram there for a long or like drag him at all, but he made the contact and slowed Thuram down. So that is a red card. And like you Andrew mentioned, the game was pretty much over at that point, in a sense that okay, maybe it sometimes happens. It was a 2-0 lead at the halftime, so yeah, maybe even with the red card you can get a reaction from the trailing team after the break, but there was none of that because Inter is a superior team. We had no like mental issues. We went from the break, we entered the pitch and started playing the same way, and there was no contest in this match. So I was also really happy to see that the substitutions went like perfectly right with the Barella and Thuram coming off, Bastoni too coming off at 1 hour mark. We need those guys benched as soon as possible in this kind of matches, and then Lautaro also, and who was the Dumfries went out with Lautaro a bit later. So I think the subs were fine as well. So yeah, can't complain about this match. Like there's nothing to complain about the one Aslani miss pass, which happened like right pretty early in the match. But apart from that,
And no surprise there, really.
it's almost like a it's almost like every match Aslani pulls one of these kind of passes, but yeah, we let it go now because it's irrelevant. The result was like it was sealed after the second goal or after the red card almost.
I was complaining last episode about Inzaghi's substitutions. He put on Barella, went up 3-0 in a match against Lecce on the weekend. Today, or yesterday rather, was my point, and I'd like to see Inzaghi do this more often, even though I know he won't, which is, hey, you're up 3-0 with 10 men. Let's put a Primavera kid on the pitch and just give them a cap, give them some minutes. And we saw that yesterday at DPR, and he looked better than Arnautovic for the most part. It was refreshing because our backup forwards are so poor and so terrible. It was just that shot of youth that I deeply enjoyed, even though it was only for 20 minutes and he almost got a goal at the end, and it was nice to see. So the substitutions from Inzaghi were great yesterday. When you're up 3-0 and have an extra man, it's an easy situation to manage. But the fact we were even in the situation, like I said, huge credit to Inzaghi. Irfan, man of the match. Are you going with Lautaro or Thuram?
Got to go with Lautaro because he scored the 3 goals. But I do agree with you. I think Thuram was kind of the star of the show. He's been on fire. He's such a problem for defenders. The way he plays, how strong he plays typically, and how fast he is. You know, we haven't had a player like that, I think, in a while, probably since like prime Lukaku when we had him. Because he's just, I don't know, he just bulldozes through people, and any sort of defender, you know, has a problem dealing with him. And then when you get to the box, he's all of a sudden very easy to go down. So I'm sure he's very frustrating to defend against. But I also think he didn't play, but one of the MVPs or man of the match for me was Inzaghi because he finally did something that, you know, we've been all asking for a while, which is to show some courage, right? I mean, we went into this match basically needing a draw. I think Monaco knew that we just needed a draw, and Monaco seemed to start this game thinking it was going to be some sort of like a cagey, defensive, like slow moving sort of match where we're content to kick the ball around and maybe settle for like a 0-0 or try to get like a late goal, like kind of like the way we played against Leverkusen. But Inzaghi completely, you know, we were on the front foot from the very beginning. We were attacking with reckless abandon from the very beginning of the match. Like everything was quick, everything was fast. We were on the front foot. It was great to see. So you could tell it was a deliberate strategy by Inzaghi to go out there and just stamp his authority on the match. And I think he took Monaco by surprise, and I think he took a lot of fans by surprise. And then one of the biggest complaints I've had with him is once we get a lead, he kind of wants to fall into like this fortress sort of mode and just protect a 1-0 lead. And he didn't even do that yesterday. Even after we scored, we were still on the front foot. Even after we were up a man, we were still on the front foot. We didn't try to like settle into some low block and not do anything. So maybe it was just a function of the fact that we ended up being up a man, but I really liked the strategy and the mentality of the team. And you could tell it was a deliberate effort by Inzaghi to kind of keep us on the front foot and just end this match as quickly as we could.
I do want to take a moment to talk about Arnautovic, who had another poor match yesterday. He had 2 chances for goals that he missed, and there was one takeaway I just wanted to touch on because I was listening to the Paramount Plus stream here in America, and the commentator, the color guy, was refreshingly critical of Arnautovic, and on Lautaro's third goal, he was basically saying that it should have been an Arnautovic goal because Arnautovic was in a better position initially than Lautaro. But rather than anticipate a rebound off the keeper, Arnautovic made a bit of a pointless run wide to the left. It didn't drag any defenders with him, and he really took himself out of the play. But Lautaro had the wherewithal to anticipate a rebound off the keeper. He followed through. He was able to get the goal. And he was just basically saying Arnautovic lacks a striker's instinct. And I do wonder like how much of what he's saying is why Arnautovic hasn't fit this system. so much since we signed him and why he's ultimately going to go down as one of Morata's worst signings for Inter. So, Jay, just curious if you had any thoughts on Arnautovic yesterday / overall his time at Inter and why it's not working.
He's shit. Terminate him. Terminate him right now. How much are we going to save on his wages? Like, he's got 6 months left. Just get rid of him. I'm not even kidding.
Are you? I'd be fine with getting rid of him.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. Get rid of him. I don't think he contributes anything. He's just a body. There's a million better players out there that we could probably bring in on a cheap loan that could do what he does, which is apparently just miss open goals and make a fool of himself and mope around. So, I say take him out back, put him out of his misery. Oh, and his signing was in the first place a complete farce. Like, to us, even 7 million euros is a lot of money, but to spend 10 million on like a 34-year-old was just the least wise thing we could have possibly done, especially one coming off a season much worse than the season he had prior, and a season largely just disjointed by regular injuries. It was just, lunacy to go out and spend that kind of money on him. And yes, we won the Scudetto, and they say, everything's forgiven if you win, but let's be real, it's not like he really contributed to that. If anything, he hasn't delivered anything near the financial outlay spent on him, and I think it's time we cut our losses.
While we're talking about failed striker signings, I want to do a quick Mercato recap. So it was a couple events have transpired since we last talked. So Palacios ended up accepting the loan move to Monza. I don't know if you guys saw the videos that were circulating online. Someone on a train in Italy recorded Monza's sporting director talking on the phone to Ausilio, presumably negotiating for various deals, including he was basically begging for Palacios on loan, and then Inter were trying to offer him Correa, and he's like, no, I don't want Correa, just give me Palacios. It was pretty humorous to see how these negotiations go down, like just like any other casual conversation. And then the other news is that Buchanan was loaned to Villarreal on an absurd. They put a 13 million euro option on this guy. There is no chance that thing gets exercised. None. That's double what we paid for him. So for all intents and purposes, that he's basically on a dry loan to Spain. And now there are a few reports that we're looking to replace him with a wingback of some sorts. Mikko, thoughts on the Mercato movement this week?
Yeah, the Palacios move. I'm not sure. Do I like it or not? Because will he play there? That's the question. If he doesn't play there, it's like total nonsense then, since at least for this, what he has been here 5 months now at Inter, at least he has get to train with the top team, and he has get to know how we play. But if he now goes to Monza and do the same thing but doesn't play much, what's the point? So I really hope we get to see him play at least a bit, since here he hasn't played at all. So I don't know. It's a bit iffy because they are like fighting for their place in the Serie A. So how the coach will react? Will he use this kind of a random kid from Argentina all of a sudden? It's a bit iffy one. As for Buchanan, yeah, I guess it was a good thing to loan him if we want to like try to get his value up, since obviously he isn't going to play much for us. I don't know, maybe Inzaghi just doesn't trust him enough, so he isn't using him much. So maybe just loan him out so that he can maybe play more. Maybe some other club can see something in him and maybe pay us a bit money so that we can get rid of him in the end next summer. As for the option, yeah, that's a pretty high one. Hard to see anyone paying that, but maybe it's just like a way for us if something like unexpected happens and he starts to play more and he starts to play well, and I don't know. I don't know if we are really even have money for that kind of a option anyway, even if he plays well. But it's just an option, so it doesn't mean much. As for the wingback options, there's been talk of Zalewski from Roma and then Biraki from Fiorentina. And I believe Biraki's case is that he's out of favor, hasn't played much lately anymore, and he just wants out. So that kind of would fit us in a sense that he's actually a Inter product. So he would fit as club trained. So we could add him to our Champions League list. But yeah, seems that Zalewski is preferred. I don't know if that's like our ownership saying what kind of players we can sign, because Biraki is like 10 years older. So there's the possible reason for this preference. Uh, I don't know about Zalewski. He hasn't been good at Roma for a while. He was a very promising player a few years ago, but I don't know. He's been on a downhill lately. So if we end up signing him, it's going to be, I don't know. Will he play for us much? Hard to say. Hard to say.
Yeah, you have to assume whoever we're signing is not going to play much because we had, like I said, Palacios and Buchanan in the squad, and neither of them ever played really. The Zalewski signing just screams oak tree. It is someone under the age of 25 who has a low cost, who is a mediocre player. This is everything Oak Tree looks for in signings. When you think of, they weren't here for Buchanan, but when you think of Palacios, it's like just these complete lottery tickets with a limited upside. So I'm not surprised he's the profile of the player we're looking at.
Yeah, and the contract situation is a bit like funny. His contract is like ending this summer,
Yeah,
but we want to only loan him, so he needs to basically extend his contract so that we can loan him. I don't know
yeah.
why that is, but that's how it works.
This
So
kid has the worst agent in the world if he agrees to this. So I think the general
yeah,
principle is Roma doesn't want to lose him for free. So Roma wants to either sell him now
and
or he needs to extend his contract. So Roma is willing to loan him to Inter
yeah,
or wherever he wants to go. But for this kid to accept, there is no chance we redeem this kid, especially with
yeah,
limited minutes.
yeah. It's a very low chances we would actually redeem him, because I've seen that okay, we would loan him like for free or some nominal fee, but then the option would be like 6-7 million, and would we pay for Zalewski next summer if we could get him for free next summer? But the issue is we want to get him now, so that's why we need to have this kind of an restructuring of his contract. But yeah,
Especially when you're going to be stuck with Buchanan again in the summer, more than likely, and you're going to have to try to sell him.
yeah.
Fawn, what's your thoughts on all this Mercato talk? Do you have a preference between Zalewski and Baragi?
Not really. It's also uninspiring. Like you look at it and you're like, okay, we just shipped out two bodies. Fine, they didn't play that much, but there were depth signings. I think one of the biggest complaints, and it happens when we talk about Aslani a lot, it's like when you're constructing a team, like all of us would love to have 22 first team players so you can have a backup at every position that can start and be a good starter. But like that's just not realistic. And so, you build a team with some redundancy. And I felt like Palacios and Buchanan were depth pieces. And yeah, they didn't play much, and you could argue we spent too much money on them. But that's always going to be debated among fans and stuff. So it's like, okay, but they were there. And, we're playing consistently twice a week. So you need something there. And now you ship them out without much of a plan on what you're going to get back in return. And so I kind of view it in the same sense, which is like these are depth signings that are basically just bodies there. And so when you think about it that way, I don't really care if it's Biragi or it's Zaluski. Ultimately, it's just like bring somebody in though, because I don't want to. I don't. I just we've been fairly lucky so far with injuries. Like we've gotten the injury bug, but no one's been out for like an extended period of time other than a Cherby. Who the hell knows what's going on with that guy? But at least we've dodged some like major injury sort of bug. And the last thing I want is to consistently depend on that now that we're going to be in the Champions League knockouts, now that we're getting into the home stretch and it looks like Napoli's going to push us the whole way. So I don't know, the entire Mercado is very underwhelming for me, and I kind of accepted a long time ago that we weren't going to be doing anything that was going to be worth a damn. So I don't know, low expectations.
When you sign these depth pieces who aren't going to play, I just like to see variety, like trying to bring attributes into the squad that don't exist. And that's why Buchanan I was okay with when we signed him. It was like, okay, the idea of signing a fast, pacey wingback is nice. And it hasn't worked out, but at least it looks like this guy, it sounds like he at least had a market. Like there were several clubs interested. So hopefully he's easier to unload. So like I can appreciate that roll the dice a bit more than it'd only be a loan, but like a Baragi roll of the dice is completely uninspiring to me. We're taking a 30 plus player who's been frozen out of the Fiorentina project. What's the upside? What is he bringing the squad that we don't have other than a pulse? So for that, I'd probably prefer the unknown that is Zalewski, because it seems like he had some promise earlier in his career, and the last year or so at Roma, he's fallen off a cliff. But to your point, Irfan, like these are depth pieces. At the end of the day, these guys are going to be making 10-minute cameos at the end of matches. They're not going to be starting key matches for us. Jay, any thoughts on the Mercato before we get into the Derby preview?
Nothing I haven't already kind of beaten to death with already. As mentioned, there's just a lack of ideas, a lack of resourcefulness, lack of creativity, which is disappointing to see. But most disappointing of all is a lack of urgency and a lack of recognition. Regarding the opportunity we have. I feel like we passed an important milestone yesterday, which was to qualify for the top 8 of the Champions League and avoid that the playoff games in February. In doing so, kind of bought ourselves some breathing room, but I get the sense that the management kind of sees it as like more vindication not to pursue any meaningful signings. It's just like, oh, job well done. We made it. Like, we haven't made it. We don't just want to get past the group stage as part of the top 8. We want to beat the opponent in the next round of the Champions League. And I'm not saying like a depth signing is the difference between doing that or not, but you never know. And regardless, it's going to give the squad more competition, going to help bolster us for the long stretch ahead. And that may be the difference between whether we proceed further in the Champions League or not, and manage to keep up with Napoli's pace as well. Reliable players that we can actually rest our key players when we have the chance to do so. I think that's hugely important. You could argue some of our players have looked fatigued at times in the end of 2024 to like the first month of 2025 time period. So yeah, absolutely. I think there's a bit of a missed opportunity there, but as Irfan said, kind of over it, kind of just accepted that this is how Oak Tree operates, and I'll keep preaching to the choir about the dangers of kind of settling when every other team is looking to make significant strides forward. But at this stage, especially in January, especially recording this now on almost at midnight on the 30th of January. So we're literally heading to the 31st of January. There's no time left anyway. So.
All right. Well, we have a special guest for you. Anthony has been gracious enough to give us some of his time and rejoin the pod. Given weird time zone stuff, him and Jay had a good conversation previewing the Derby. So we're going to cut to that, let you listen to that preview, And after the preview's over, we'll be back to talk about the match amongst ourselves. So here's the Anthony J. Inter-Worldwide Interjections Derby Preview Extravaganza. That's our episode title.
All right, so I'm joined by the one and only Anthony of Inter-Worldwide, the Australian Interista legend. What a privilege to have Anthony back on the show. Anthony, thank you for joining us again.
It's a pleasure to be here, man. I feel actually honoured that we get to be here on a day that was one to celebrate, but I'm sure we'll also find ways around it to talk about what we need to be concerned about as well. So a pleasure to be here with you, bro.
Thank you very much, my friend. Speaking of a day to celebrate, it was a fantastic Champions League match day. The only thing, I almost said better than Inter winning, but that would be a bit toxic. So the only thing nearly as good as Inter winning is Juve and Milan losing on the same day. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it happened today, and it was glorious, wasn't it?
It definitely was. You know, we baked the cake ourselves, but not only did we not need to ice the cake, but we also did not need to decorate the cake because we had Milan and Juve both to do one of those jobs each. I'm not too sure who has the shitter end of the stick. On paper, it might seem like Juve had the worst campaign, but Milan had a chance literally to go to Croatia, get 3 points, and come back with a top 8 qualification spot. And they came back with 2 extra fixtures in February, I believe. And that's a pain in the ass because it's a pain. February is already a pain in the ass for us. Can you imagine adding 2 extra fixtures to that, man? Can you seriously?
Yeah, it's going to be congested, and, you know, naturally we wish the worst for them and hope that this fixture congestion causes them to drop more points. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We all know that Conceição is an elite manager and Milan is full of world-class players. So let's have some respect here, right? Speaking of world-class players, man, Lautaro Martinez is the best striker in the planet. And do you know why? Because he's the only striker who can shoot dead center of goal 3 times and score a hat-trick. Your thoughts on his hat-trick today?
We've been crying out for him to just not be crap, respective of his wage and what he's expected to be. He just took a little bit longer to hit the ground running this season. He looks a lot fitter today than he did 7 to 8 weeks ago. And I get it. He came off the back of a very big season last season and the back of not a very long holiday as well. But he wasn't the only athlete in the sport to come off that. And I think that the criticism of him is very valid, but all will be forgiven if we go on to reach our season's objectives. And I think he's got 6 goals in his last 5 games now, which is not only a good stat, but a lot of them have been quality. I do think goalkeepers could have done a little better on a few of those efforts, but it doesn't really matter when you make them look as good as they do, you know, in theory. I just think he's hitting form at the right time of the season. We're coming into a congested period in February where, had it not been for a very big advantage for Conte only playing 1 game a week, which I'm sure we'll get to in some capacity, we would be thriving on all fronts. It just so happens that we've set a bar very high, and one paramount factor of achieving that is Lautaro Martinez doing exactly this, scoring every game or more, having more goals than there are games. So long may it continue. Just why is he still taking penalties? Like, is there seriously no other penalty taker? Marcus Thuram must be the shittest penalty taker on the planet. He must bomb them in training. Like, how is nobody else prepared to just pick up a ball and go, I can kick it 12 yards? I know he's the captain and all, and like it's important for him to get his goals up as well, and I admire his confidence, but even then, I admit it was a shit penalty, bro.
I mean, when you look at the players on the pitch at the time, there's Mkhitaryan, who is largely allergic to scoring. You've got Barella, who I think the last penalty I saw Barella take was when he played for Cagliari, and it was against us, and he put it into Rosed. Thuram, unknown quality. And then you've got Aslani and DiMarco. DiMarco, I think the last penalty he took for us was in a 3-3 draw at home against Atalanta in the first Inzaghi season.
Yes.
and hit the crossbar.
And he has never taken one since. Even
so.
Probably profile-wise, he probably is your most trustworthy. Like, if I was him, I'd just start putting my foot through it 300 times a day in training and tell the goalkeeper what way you're going in training and just see how you go. How hard could it be?
I know, right? Yeah, how hard can it be? Seriously.
Yeah, you and I could do it. So he needs to get his act together.
That's right. But some luminaries I read once said Lautaro scores through sheer willpower alone, and when it doesn't happen, it feels like just ramming your head against the wall. But when it happens, it's great to see. So,
yeah,
I've got a few questions for you from the boys that I want to move to. So, obviously, Asllani has been a topic of hot debate amongst many Inter fans, ourselves included, and that's no thanks due to a certain radical left winger who is a passionate fan of Asllani for some mind-boggling reason. But in any instance, I thought he was okay today. I mean, like, I don't think he did anything wrong except pick up a stupid yellow, which he seems to do. He just picks up these, like, really just needless kind of crap yellows, He did that again today by kicking someone in the balls or whatever it was. And but in any instance, his game was fine today. I don't think he was particularly impressive, but he was fine. Would you start him in the derby, or would you put Zielinski in there? Assuming Hakan is out.
Look, I would have to say Zielinski, and I think it will be Zielinski because Zielinski played no minutes today, mate. So I think that Inzaghi has done this strategically. It wouldn't surprise me to see him put in Asllani there, but in my opinion, Zielinski showed in his last showing that he's still got the qualities of a midfielder that Asllani just simply doesn't have. He really doesn't, man. I don't care what anybody says. I've given this guy more than enough chances. Everybody has. And I know that he hasn't even been awful in his last few outings in Serie A as well. He's been slightly above average in a couple of games, not great in a few. Like, I think he was decent with the 90 minutes he got against Empoli. But I think against Bologna, he was poor. He had a decent match against Venezia, but like everybody kept saying, it's Venezia. And for me, bro, it just comes down to quality, and we can't not win a third derby of the year to this shitbag Milan. All of our jokes aside and anti-jinx propaganda aside, if we don't win this derby, I can't even begin to describe how shit it would feel overall. We need to put our best foot forward, and our best foot forward starts with going back to the simple rule of if your best players are available, pick your best players. And Zielinski, whether he admits it or not, or I don't care how many times he says he doesn't want to play in that position, if it was good enough for transitioning for Marcelo Brozovic, for Eriksen, for Hakan Çalhanoğlu, it's good enough for you as well, mate. So get with it. So I think he will start Zielinski, and I expect him to have a good game as well. What about you?
I'm on the fence, but I'm leaning Zielinski as well. I think Asllani has built a little bit of confidence over the past few games, and naturally that's only good for him to carry that into a potentially Scudetto deciding game. But Zielinski, for me, even though he also hasn't set the world alight as a DM or in any capacity really since he joined the club, I still think there's a just inherent kind of game knowledge and experience that he possesses that's going to be really important in the derby. And as you said, we're staring down the barrel of 3 losses in a row, which is less acceptable when you consider how chaotic this Milan has been. Obviously, they changed coach midway through, not even midway through the season, and they've obviously had an up and down track record across the season. And in amongst their ups and downs, their 2 big ups just happened to come against us, and they won both derbies, honestly, fairly convincingly. Let's be real about it. They were the better side in both derbies, and that in itself is a massive concern, the fact that we were not, better than this Milan in both occasions that we played. So yeah, I'd like to see Zielinski start in that position. Another question for you here, this one from Irfan. Speaking of Inzaghi, right, where do you currently rate him in the list of like top managers in Europe or across the world?
Ooh, that's a pretty good question, actually, because I don't think we speak about it very often. I think because we're always so bombarded with our own problems as Inter fans among ourselves, we don't really take a step back to value not only Inzaghi but a lot of the players in our team that would walk into any starting 11 in Europe, basically, especially in a season like this where a lot of your typical big guns like Bayern Munich, Paris, Real Madrid, Man City, they're all shit, to be honest. When you really break them down in context to what their aspirations are, they're all shit. They're all underperforming, and not by one or two levels, by two or three, which is so it says a lot about their expectations. You know, especially a team like Madrid who tapers on and off of being first in La Liga, even if they are having a shit season. That being said about them, Carlo Ancelotti proves season after season that it's only really his aura that is required at a club for him to do well, even though Real Madrid's more of a luxury club than not. We know that. Is Pep Guardiola sort of being found out for certain elements of his job this year? I don't think that's fair to say, and I'm not a big Pep fan. I don't think he'll ever be on the level of a Mourinho manager overall. So I think if you asked anybody in the world who they would want at the moment, it would still be Pep. But I would have to say that Inzaghi's up there, and I'm still a big Conte fanboy. And what he's doing with Napoli this season, even if you don't like him in the background, you are thinking they're going, fuck's sake, this guy's good when it comes to focusing in and narrowing into Serie A. This season, Simeone's having another good one as well. Forza terrorism football, Conte and Simeone. It always reigns supreme, no matter what era you're in. It always still finds a way. You know who's really underrated, bro? He's not the best, but Unai Emery has Aston Villa qualifying in the top 8 of the Champions League, and he's so underlooked.
I thought you were going to say Conceição.
For real, bro. Unai Emery, because he had that stint managing at a banter club like Arsenal, and they were literally making fun of him. I think he gets very, very underlooked for what he is for a manager. But overall, I'd have to say Inzaghi's top 3 at the least, and you could argue more often than not that he is the best manager in the world at the moment. Jurgen Klopp's not in a job. Ancelotti, you could argue it. You could argue Pep still. You'd have to work for it a little bit more. There's nobody else. So, for to say Inzaghi, I personally wouldn't trade him for anybody in the world.
Yeah, and what I'll say to his big credit is that he puts up with a lot, you know? Like a lot of managers would have kicked up more of a stink about the situation at the club. You know, he came in to a club with the ownership on its last legs, essentially, having to basically make fire sales in order to stay within certain financial parameters. And obviously then that ownership defaulted on their loan and we changed hands. And now this ownership is doing their own fucking nonsense thing. And through all of it, he's been very much composed, hasn't, you know, kicked his toys out of the pram like Conte would have and did. That's, of course, the reason he's here is because Conte decided to quit. You know, he didn't want to even attempt to defend the title with a squad that was being downsized in terms of like quality and market value, right? But Inzaghi has never complained really, and I think that really works in our favor. His kind of demure or his kind of understated approach. You know, he's not as outspoken as many coaches, and I think this helps him fly under the radar, and that's to our benefit. In a way, it means he doesn't get the credit he deserves, but in a way, it means that he's our undiscovered kind of secret jewel, and hopefully that continues for a long time. It's been, you know, I can't even remember the last time I wanted a coach to stay for more than 5 years, you know, and Inzaghi's reaching that point. And yeah, as you said, probably top 3 for me, probably top 5 in the world. You know, got to include, I was going to say Pioli, but let's not go there.
This guy.
Speaking of Limoni, though, and his, you know, and his world-class attributes, we do see a tendency from him to repeat certain mistakes, and there's a lot of debate about whether that's on him or whether that's on the quality of depth he has available in his squad. And I'm referring particularly to this kind of late game, second half implosion. And we saw it particularly badly 2 seasons ago. Last season was obviously kind of like a perfect season for us in the league. But the season before that, there were a lot of late collapses. This season, we've kind of, on unfavorably bucked the trend that we had last season, which was that we didn't concede any goals in the last 15 minutes of a game, pretty much the entire season, right? This season, it's just happening nonstop. Late goals conceded against Milan to lose both derbies, late goals conceded against Juventus to blow a 2-goal lead, late goal conceded against Leverkusen to draw a tight game where we honestly didn't even try to play football, and countless other examples along the way. The question here is, I guess, what do you attribute this to? Is this just some kind of, do you agree with the notion that this is, limone cowardice and just kind of this typically conservative Italian manager fear or conservatism, which is biting him in the arse, or is it just a lack of proper reinforcements?
I think it's actually a lack of reinforcements, more so than it is the other thing. But that whole Italian notion that you just got on there could be growing into him, could be seeping into him. He's won his Scudetto now. He's going to get older, so he's going to move a little bit with the times and the trends there. But he's still easily the most front forward manager in Serie A, in my opinion. I think we're just looking at a squad at the moment that naturally can get complacent. They've had that Scudetto together now. It's going to take a lot to keep these guys motivated, and like you were just about to touch on, it comes with constantly refreshing the blood. Like, how shit was Arnautovic today, man? How useless are our other backup attackers that we have at the moment? Our forever debate with Aslani is going to be if he's good enough. Most probably not. The backline is thinning as we go. Darmian, as much as I'll always love him, I'm a big fan. I'll probably get his name printed on a jersey when he retires. He probably needs to go at the end of this. In an ideal world, you've got your Darmian replacement already here, right? At the end of last season, basically. I mean, and the fact that he's been given another year after the Scudetto is more than good enough. I'm happy to do that. But anything beyond this season now is becoming a joke, because you really want to sacrifice someone like him to the gods next season when more often than not he has sloppy games or loses his man or turns one too late or just can't take a good touch moving forward, can't get behind anybody in the attacking third. I don't want to be here around for that version of Darmian. So it would be nice if we could move into finding a replacement for him, but it doesn't look like we're any closer to doing that either. My biggest fear is that what we're talking about now, bro, will be not such a calm conversation when we're doing it again next season. It'll be a conversation of why the fuck haven't we rectified anything? Why haven't we addressed the situation that Acerbi was going to leave? He's gone. De Vrij's gone a season older and he's not match fit all the time. Meanwhile, you haven't really reinforced anywhere else from a centre-back position, and you just expect Augusto to be makeshift on the left, Darmian to be makeshift on the right, and also back up to Denzel Dumfries. I can see these situations coming from a mile away, and I hope that it's not. I really hope that it's not. But we'll see what happens, man. We're definitely not the only club in Europe dealing with this sort of situation. It felt like we were about 4 years ago, after Conte left. But this hasn't been an Inter-isolated issue for a long time. A lot of clubs are copying it worse than we are, and even the clubs that do have money to spend, they can't spend it for shit. It's in the hands of donkeys.
That's a great point, and as known as I am for being a massive critic, just in general, of everything, but particularly management's decisions and transfers and things like this, you are right. For example, Man City is fading, and a large part of that is due to, in my opinion, players like Bernardo Silva and especially De Bruyne just not being what they were 2-3 years ago. They haven't been able to buy players that match them. That new guy that they got, although he scored a nice goal yesterday, Savinho, I think he's a flog. I think he doesn't even come close to matching, the prime Bernardo Silva on the left. Who else they have? Riyad Mahrez, etc. And obviously Grealish was a massive flop. I think this Doku guy is a one-trick pony. But you get my point. It's a lot of money spent on failure, essentially, even though they can absorb that, the cost of blown transfers. Speaking of, and I think this is a good segue here, what I said to the boys last week was that this January Mercato seems to be focused on selling the failures of the winter transfer market. So we brought in Palacios. He played about 12 minutes combined and is now gone. There's rumors that we're already planning to move on from Joseph Martinez at the end of the season. And Buchanan, although he was from the season before, is also apparently a done deal to Villarreal. Let me ask you first, what are your thoughts around the recent recruitment since Oak Tree came in? The second part of the question is, we're linked to Zalewski and Biragi as a Buchanan replacement, I guess. Which of them do you prefer?
The Buchanan injury must have shook him up bad, and he mustn't get the vote of confidence from our medical staff when they're communicating with Inzaghi. And for the record, I think that we've got good medical staff. I think that our players don't get injured anywhere near as often as other big clubs do, not only in Serie A but in Europe. And our rate of recovery and return time is a lot quicker than most teams. And when a player of ours does take a knock, they tend to come back and perform quite well and not get injured again for a long period of time. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Shout out to the medical staff. They do a good job at Inter, to be honest. We do complain about them sometimes, but we complain about everything. We don't complain about them very often, which is a good thing. Overall, Buchanan's injury must have sucked balls, because even I saw when he came on, was it against Bologna where he was just arse? I forget. It was a game where we were very, very dissatisfied overall with the team's performance.
I think so.
I can't even attribute that to whether it was drop points or not. It could have very well been, the 1-0 over Venezia for all I know, but he just couldn't get through anything. He couldn't even dribble the ball properly. I think it got away from him twice and it went out of bounds, and he just looked so shook. And I know that players need to play themselves into form, but in a team like this at the moment, which is very much set in stone, and so it should be when you're champions of Italy and qualifying top 4 out of 36 teams, whatever it is in Europe, Buchanan's not going to get that time here, bro, and everybody knows it. It's best for him to loan out now and for us to see what we're working with. He's not going to get those minutes. He is a waste of time and space, and if that means bringing in someone like Biragi, I guess I am for it, but I didn't even know that Fiorentina would be up for loaning him out. I thought he was, consistently doing his thing on the left-hand side. Who's he out of favor for? And why would they entertain him going to us?
Well,
I thought he was like one of their uno di nois.
Yeah, I guess he is. Well, he is the club captain. He was the club captain, and you're right. He is one of their bandiera, but I think he has lost his place to Parisi. I think I was never big on Parisi, to be completely honest, but that's my understanding. I'd personally take Zalewski just because he's more versatile, even though he's also a favoring left-footed player. At least I think he is. Zalewski has played everywhere. He's played centre mid, he's played left wing back, left back, right wing back, right back, and even like left wing and right wing forward as well. So as a versatile player, nothing that's gonna move the needle too much. But the versatility, in my opinion, is important, because having a player who can slot in at left or right comfortably is, I think, a really big asset to have. And that's what we were trying to do to Buchanan, hence him playing at left wing back for pretty much most of his short and uninspired Inter career. But you hit the nail on the head, man, when you said like it was just clear that he's not good enough. And at Inter, you don't get the time, or rather, you don't have time for fans to sit there and debate whether you're good. Kind of like Aslani. Aslani's got far more time than many, many players before him ever got, for players to or for fans to make their mind up. Is this guy good? Is this guy not? And the fact that we're in his third year still having this debate is indicative of the kind of questionable quality, in my opinion. I think more talented players have come and gone without getting as much of a chance as Aslani, due to competition, due to the stubbornness of coaches or whatever it might be. The circumstances of the environment you're in are obviously a factor, as well as the state of the club. As you said, we're competing on 3 fronts. Reigning defending champions of Italy finished top 4, out of like 30 something teams, 36 teams. There's a standard there that needs to be met, and we can't just sit here and wait to see if you're any good.
Yeah. So
what about Oak Tree? What about Oak Tree? Tell me what you think about these recent signings, and are you concerned about the trend? Because I'm feeling like they're just trying to find more Bisek. They're just trying to find another fucking unknown for like 5 to 7 million kind of cheap ass price range, and essentially grow them into like serviceable and saleable players.
So the thing with Zalewski, I read this today. I just wanted to bring it up. He's only got 5 months left on his contract, so Roma needs to agree an extension with him so they can loan him out. The good news is that his market value shouldn't be high into the double digits at this point. So if he was to perform well, or if we're sort of taping him up, so to speak, we might be able to get this guy for free. And that might be a reason why we haven't actually made a move, because I didn't realize until this morning that he was so close to the end of his contract. So he's got 5 months left on his contract. That's a reason why we haven't really been in a hurry to accelerate. But we've seen this story before. What will happen is he'll have a couple of good games. A couple of other teams in Europe will sniff out that, oh, there's a slightly above average player that's waiting to break into a slightly better than team that he's at now, which is Roma, which isn't really hard to be at the moment, and someone will definitely buy him for that price. So I would definitely be in the Zalewski corner as well, had it not been for that factor. But hey, Inter is a much more attractive club as we're talking today than they have been in recent times, so it could give us a leg up there. Overall, the arrivals have been concerning, to say the least. The Martinez goalkeeping situation is comical. How many minutes has the guy actually played altogether, man?
I think he played one full game against Udinese in the Coppa Italia.
He's played one full game against Udinese in the Coppa Italia.
In the third round.
He's played no minutes in Serie A. He's played no minutes in Serie A yet, has he?
I think so, yes.
I don't think so. There you go, man.
And this is a guy.
That's crazy.
I know I'm just beating a dead horse here, but this is a guy who is almost 27 years old. He's not some youngster, despite being nearly 27. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say 26 and a half or 26 and 3/4. He has played one season of top flight football in his entire career. The rest of it has been spent in Serie B or in Segunda. I know he was at Leipzig. Obviously, they're a top flight Bundesliga team, but he played 2 games in 2 years. So I'm not really counting that as like considerable experience worth taking into consideration. So this is a guy who we decided to spend.
This is a shit transfer. This is a guy
we blew our entire transfer budget on. We had fucking no money because we had to, essentially pay the obligations for Fratesi and Augusto. I can acknowledge that. That's fine. So we had very limited funds to spend. Knowing that we had limited funds before Suning ended up losing the club, I believe they greenlit the free transfers of Zielinski and Taremi. Very, very Suning, very, very Marotta style transfers, free transfers, players in their prime age, 30, 29 to 31 kind of thing. And, on decent wages, but obviously for free, and both vastly experienced players. And now Oak Tree comes in, and, I said this in previous weeks, but we went from trying to sign Juan Cabal from Verona and eventually lost out to Juve. We're trying to sign some guy called Nathan Zeze from Brazil or some fucking German club, and then also got priced out, and then eventually settled on Thomas Palacios for 7 million. And so that's essentially 20-something million for Joseph Martinez and Thomas Palacios, and they've contributed 0. That's my concern. The return on investment is abysmal right now for the recent Oak Tree transfers.
It's not great in terms of what to expect going forward. Have we seen the end of Marotta's control and signings like that? I really hope not. We know that their primary goals are achieving a balanced budget, reducing debt, which is still a lot. But at the same time, they're also pushing for infrastructure investment. They're trying to do some things right, but at the same time, they're not willing to fuck around. And unfortunately, the side of fucking around means buying depreciating assets at this point. And while I understand it, because we are in a horrible position, if we didn't have the level of debt that we had, there could be a little bit more freeway. So I think that we are very much at the back end of the way Beppe Marotta traditionally operates. That's not to say we won't get the 1 or 2 signings maybe per season and a bit until he retires at the end of 2027, I believe it is. Although we can always keep our fingers crossed for a slight extension there. But even the year before that, when Suning was becoming so close to defaulting, the signings had dried up at that point, mate, because Arnautovic on loan with an obligation, which was basically tied to winning the league, meaning the obligation was for, if it works out this season, I guess we'll put up with the shit that has to come with having the hangover of having Arnautovic there. I think Augusto was probably my favorite late signing of the Suning era. He's paid his debt moreover big time. We've had to obviously pay a lot of that later on, but that was a very good deal, good deal in foresight, probably one that Marotta did there. Fratesi, even though he wasn't going to be the main guy in the system, once again, and everything's forgiven when you win a Scudetto. Even the fact that we brought Alexis Sanchez back, I'm a big Alexis fan in general, but I wasn't a huge fan of bringing him back for that sort of wage, but all is forgiven. Juan Cuadrado, what the actual happened there. David Klaassen, he played for Inter, Jay, in case you forget. David Klaassen played for Inter.
I'll never forget.
Yeah, no, nobody will. And it's... Other than that, I think our biggest marquee signing of the last few seasons is probably Benji Pavard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there anyone bigger than Pavard over the last 2 years?
No, of course not.
3 years? No, there's not.
Yeah, Pavard's outright our biggest signing in maybe since Lukaku, I think.
Yeah.
Not in terms of...
Not even the loan, the original Lukaku transfer.
Yeah, exactly. Since in Conte's first season. I mean, not in terms of transfer fee, because I think Fratesi costs more than Pavard, but in terms of like repute, name value, notoriety, that kind of thing, Pavard is clear. You know, this is a guy who, when we signed him, obviously we spoke about this in detail, but this is a guy who World Cup winner, Champions League winner, multiple Bundesliga winner. This guy's a serial winner. He has that class from just being at a dominant champion for so many years, and to bring in someone like that still in their prime age, or maybe even yet to hit their prime age, is massive. And it was a great opportunity at that price point. And yeah, there's obviously a massive concern there that Oak Tree will not pursue such opportunities in the future, considering the way that they're spending their money. You know, we would be so much better off today, even though the room for improvement is quite minor. If you look at the table and stuff, it's not always about the right here and now and saying, oh, you know, even if we'd spent 50 million, we'd still be, you know, in first place, because we're technically almost tied for first place, right? First or second. And we're top four in the Champions League. It's like, how much better can you get? Sure, that's fair. That's what Mikko would say. And I'd say, listen, Mikko, fuck you, all right? It's not about that. It's about taking the opportunities to entrench yourself in a position of dominance. Because one thing this club does well is win and then not hold on to that kind of winning position, not hold on to that winning hand. I think you mentioned the players have complacency. I think that's definitely the case. I also think, you know, we've suffered from ownership's inability to maintain the cost of keeping a good squad.
We are very lucky to have Inzaghi and Marotta and Ausilio in this regard as well. We're managed very well from a backroom point of view, and obviously we complain a lot. Like I say, we complain about everything to one another, but in terms of how we're run in respect to our main rivals in the league, you can tell that everybody identifies with the core values of this club. Zanetti being around helps a lot, even if he isn't the most vocal and he's not, you know, a wartime consigliere, as they would say. He helps a lot more than people think. When I look at what's going down at those other guys, not even going to ruin the show by saying their names at this point in time, because we're having a good talk now.
You mean Ibrahimovic?
But I think that, yes, the Lion has to get walked backstage through the back door. Tough guy, absolute tough guy. Anyway, I think that while Marotta is around, while everything is the way it is, unfortunately, Oak Tree will look to find a middle ground of what you're talking about here. The topic of, well, we are good enough now. Can you maintain it? What's the bare minimum you need to maintain it? And that's what I mean when I said there will still be a Marotta signing per season, in my opinion, going forward after this season in the next transfer market. There still will be one, maybe even two of those per season, but they won't be great ones. They will be gifts. They will be means to ends. They will be proper papers over cracks. And I'm all for it, because I don't think we're in an era of football where anything necessarily guarantees success. So if we can all put ourselves aside and go, fucking hell, we're not going to live forever. We don't need to really care if our team's building a project to make sure in 25 years we leave this planet and they're in good hands. I'm happy to just see the sustainability with Oak Tree strategy, which just involves keeping our operations as streamlined as much as possible, reaching as many people, and selling the club to an investor when that debt is nowhere near as north as it is now. We won't be seeing many signings, man. We won't be seeing many. The good news is that if we can sell properly, which we won't, our next crop coming forward into seniority is incredible and can be for a long time. It can carry this club forward, winning trophies for the next 5 to 6 to 7 years. I'm talking about if you move along the likes of Acerbi, Darmian, Mkhitaryan. Obviously, Zoma, as good as he is, isn't going to last past another season. Maybe after this, we shouldn't even be really talking about that, to be honest. Otherwise, we're going to have Handanovic 2.0 on our hands. Arnautovic, Correa. We can't move all of them off at once, I don't think, but you need to move those on so that the next group, the senior group, is now Bastoni, Barella, Lautaro, Di Marco, Fratesi, Augusto. De Vrij would still belong in that group as well. This is a very, very good core to have, Jay, going into the next 5 to 6 years. What we need to do now is we need to stopgap their years. We're not going to find another Barella. We're not going to find another Bastoni. Hell, you might not even find another Lautaro, but you need to patch those positions well enough to make sure that the next crop coming through are better than Aslani. They have to be. They can't be the ones going forward when people like Hakan move on, when people like even Dumfries, if he moves on, who he's been fantastic this season. And I'm forgetting Thuram as well. Like, look at all these good players who are right about to hit their peak that can carry us into success the next 5 to 7 years. We're just shit scared that we're not going to be able to plug them. We can't plug them, man. Our bench might look like proper crap if we're not careful. If these Palacioses and these Buchanans keep coming in, that's when we're in a little bit of problems.
Yeah, I agree completely. And our expectations have been influenced by just how above expectations some of these low cost and free transfers have panned out for us. I'm talking specifically about Acerbi and Mkhitaryan. These guys were brought in to be cover, but they've instead embedded themselves as starting players in a team that went to the Champions League final, went toe-to-toe with Man City, arguably could have, should have won that game, won the league in dominant fashion last season. This is far beyond what most people probably expected from either of these guys. And you're 100% right. When Barella is 32 years old and he's the club captain or whatever, if Lautaro stays around that long and is 31 and he's been at the club nearly 10 years, who's the new Lautaro? Who's the new Thuram that we're bringing in on a free at 25, 26 years of age? You know what I mean? That's a fantastic point. And to that point, I will say that, we don't know what's going to happen between now and then. Obviously, what ownership changes may or may not occur. But yeah, just it is something that we need to keep an eye on because, as we've covered, the Oak Tree transfer strategy has not been hugely convincing so far. Barella was 22 when he joined the club. Likewise, Lautaro was, I think, 21 or 20 when he joined the club. We need quality players of this age who are coming through. I like to think Bisek is one of them. To no one's surprise, I don't believe Aslani is one of them. I'm sure as fuck Buchanan is not one of them. But Augusto can be one of them. And so, having a good amount of necessary turnover and an injection of fresh blood is really important. And, I've said this multiple times, but for me, it was really disappointing that we went into the new season with the exact same starting 11 as the last time. I just don't think you can do that and get away with it. We're getting away with it now, but season is still long. You never know what's going to happen. Let me ask one final question before we wrap up with a prediction on the derby. So I'll let that stew in the back of your mind. But what is the biggest hole currently in our squad? How would you address it?
That's a tough question, man. It really is, because it's a different position every couple of weeks, isn't it? It feels that way. I mean, from a replacement point of view, I think we've all seen how much we regress when we switch Hakan for Aslani. I personally think Bastoni is going under the radar this season as our most consistently best player. And I think that if you were to see him, and I'm touching every bit of wood in within proximity of my office right now, if something was to ever happen to him, we would feel that more than any other position. He's brilliant from an attacking point of view, from a tactical point of view. He's very clever. He's very switched on, very focused, loves this team, sees the field from an angle with the way, if you look at his heat map, he's just fantastic. Bastoni's fantastic. So that being said, the first position that came to mind, even though it was a position that I thought, no, I can justify going against it, was at centre back, because I think we're very fragile there. We're one bad injury away from teetering, and I think we've got a lot of makeshift positions leaving. De Vrij has had a great season. Can you say hand on heart that you'd trust him to go 38 games next season in the Champions League and back it up? All respect to him. Could you, Jay?
No, man, I don't even trust him for the derby. I still have
There you go.
have Giroud trauma, intense Giroud trauma.
There you go. I thought that by now Pavard would acclimatize himself to being the central centre back of a back three. Doesn't look like he wants to do that. It wouldn't be the first time he's refused to play a certain position. So if he's not going to give that a go, because I'm just thinking, fuck, that would have made things a lot easier, wouldn't it, Benji? You have Bastoni on the left, you in the center, bring up Bisek on the right, because with you two, with Pavard and Bastoni next to him, Bisek's ready to start next season with them two next to him. He's not ready to start 38 games if the other two next to him are rotating every 2 or 3 weeks. That back three is fundamental when you're looking to drop. When you're looking to drop as minimal points as you're looking to go for a league, which we're seeing now. Next season, I'm not even going to get into that now, but we'll stand a much better chance at winning the Scudetto from match day 1 next season than we do now, tied on match day 22. That one game a week ain't no fucking joke for Conte. It's a big pain in the ass, and it's pissing me off just thinking about it. Next season with European football, he will struggle, and we will be there to pounce. But that being said, we are a Bastoni injury away and a Pavard injury away again from being very, very thin there, to the point where we're going, well, at least we've got Carlos Augusto and Matteo Darmian to come in. That's going to wear thin next season. And I feel like Augusto does a very good job in that position. Don't get me wrong. There aren't many games that Augusto goes and plays in that position that he plays poorly. And I guess it's unfortunate that's probably one of the reasons Palacios got loaned out, and the fact that if they're going to bring in someone like Zelewski or Biragi, that they're more inclined to actually be a backup for Di Marco, and Augusto would see more minutes in that position going forward. I think I've answered that question. I think it does actually come back to centre backs, man. For me, like I said, if Bastoni got injured, we'd be fucked. Yeah. We'd be screwed, man. We'd be screwed more if Bastoni got injured than if it was Barella, mate.
I think to address the point about Pavard and the central centre-back position, I think Pavard just lacks that kind of aerial dominance to really anchor that position the way Acerbi does. I think Pavard is more comfortable on the right, and that right centre-back position suits him like a glove. Even though Bisek has scored, I think, 4 goals or something in his time here, whereas Pavard has scored none. I still think Pavard is better going forward. Bisek has made the most of the opportunities been given to him, and he's obviously capitalized on what goal-scoring chances have come his way. But when you look at the range of passing and the kind of movement and stuff and the technique, I think Pavard is a all-round, more polished player in the attacking phase. So I do prefer a Pavard in that position compared to Bisek. And Bisek is still raw. He's still green to a degree. Watching him get molested by Leao in the Super Cup was not fun, to be honest. So he still needs time to grow. Pavard, with all that experience, is grown enough. But yeah, that central centre-back position, my personal hope is that Bisek can develop to take that position. It would obviously just solve a headache with a inbuilt solution rather than having to go out and buy a new player. There's a risk there. We don't know the quality we'll get. We don't know how much money we'll have to spend. We don't know whether they'll adapt properly. If Bisek can take that role, then that will just kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah, definitely. And I got to give a shout out to Bisek. Like the fact that Pavard, came back today, and yeah, he looked good. But I was just remember watching Pavard and thinking, you know what, Bisek has been, whenever has been called upon to do his job, he's still playing light years ahead of his time. So big up to him. I'm glad that we've got him.
Agreed. All right. Well, let's wrap up with a prediction for the derby. Give me a scoreline and give me a brief account on how you think the game's going to play out.
Usually I'm pessimistic, so I'll give you two predictions. I'll give you my real prediction, and then I'll just verbalize the anti-jinx so that no one can come back and say it's your fault. But we should have won the first two derbies prior to the matches. We were all gutted at the end of these two derbies because they were there for the taking, and we decided to be weak. We decided to be very weak. Especially in that second game, man, absolutely disgusting to have that sort of a turnaround. Actually disgusting. This time around, we have an opportunity that I didn't think that we'd get again this season, and it's an opportunity to get them while they're down and to really hit them where it hurts. If our boys don't smell blood, and I said this on the Uncle Sharma channel this morning when we were celebrating our reaction, there's 25 to 30% of this Inter that hasn't been untapped yet this season. There's a savage side of it. There's a ruthless side of it, which is why we're all so shitty as fans this season, because they're not in first gear. We're not in first gear yet, but we've still got an opportunity to get into first gear, and we already technically started it today. But you know in Mario Kart, when you click go like half a second too early before the lights, and instead of like bursting through, you just slip on the spot and you automatically stop.
Yeah.
That's how the Monaco thing would be if we fuck this game up against Milan. We have a great opportunity now to propel ourselves into a part of the season that we need every shred of confidence we can get. We've already crossed a major hurdle by making sure we don't have two rubbish European legs to play at the back end of February, going into a very busy, what would have been round of 16 already. We at least avoid what would have been a round of 32 technically. Yuck. In the Champions League. That's the current world that we're in. We've got very congested fixtures coming up, and if we can get a derby win, I'll actually feel very confident that this team has it in them to win something big this season. Because right now, bro, you know me, I'm a big fan of Conte. I was all eggs in that basket. Even at the start of the season, I thought, Jesus Christ, this guy on one game, when he tanked that game against Lazio, I knew straight away, man, we were in for something really ugly this season, and he's going to be there every step of the way. So if we get another sniff at this Champions League, we should really, really go for that. So I'm glad that we've gone over that first hurdle. That's the top 8. But I know it was a bit of a roundabout way, but yeah, we are in a position to really propel our season properly at the right time. You get momentum now with Lautaro in this form by winning a derby and making it hurt. Because the way that they got eliminated by Zagreb was actually comical today, bro. You couldn't even go to Dinamo Zagreb and win that game. Like that just, remember under Spalletti? That was PSV under Spalletti. That was their PSV. It's right today. And that felt like shit when it happened to us, because those sort of games that are meant to propel you forward, but instead it just takes you back 2 or 3 steps, and we've got a chance to kick them where it hurts, because if they don't start collecting points soon, they're going to be in a top 4/5 race at the end of the season, and that'll be something that you and I can laugh at.
So give me a scoreline.
Let's go 3-1 to Inter. Lautaro scores 2, and Mkhitaryan or Barella, a midfielder, scores the third one.
And for Milan?
But actually, the real scoreline will be 1-1. We'll score first. We'll dominate large periods of the match. Milan will score. We'll all be messaging each other about how they're definitely going to make it 2-1 in the last few seconds like they always do. This time they won't, but we will still drop the points and feel like shit. That's my anti-jinx for everybody.
To play devil's advocate a little bit, I'm going to say you are 100% right about the opportunity currently laid out in front of us, but I feel like it's not the first time either. The first derby was like the sacking of Fonseca derby. There was a lot of speculation that if Fonseca lost the derby, he'll be sacked right there and then. Miraculously, he pulled some 4-4-2 out of his ass, completely outcoached Inzaghi, completely tactically destroyed us, and won the derby deservedly. Second derby came around, and it was Fonseca's second game in charge of the club. Likewise, there's an opportunity there to kind of give a rough induction, you know what I mean, a baptism by fire, and we gave them all the courage and motivation from a brave 2-0 comeback to win heroically 3-2 in the dying moments of the game. That's got to feel great, and we gave them that. So thankfully, it hasn't done them too much good, looking at how they've proceeded since then. But yeah, to play devil's advocate, we've been in this position before, haven't we? And we haven't yet capitalized. And I'm going to go with a 2-1 prediction for Milan. No, I'm kidding. I'm actually going to predict an Inter win, but I think it's going to be a horrendously nerve-wracking game. Not just because I'm a pathological pessimist, just because I think the game's going to be tense, it's going to be nervy, and I think both sets of players are really going to be feeling the weight of expectation on their shoulders. The Inter players are going to be feeling exactly what you've said, that, look, we've just gone past a major milestone or an achievement by avoiding the extra playoff games in the Champions League. Milan are going to be upset, and they're going to feel the pressure of a recent spate of unconvincing results. I mean, it took them, they were down 2-1 against Parma until like the last couple of minutes of the game, barely turned that around. They drew against Cagliari. They lost against Juventus in a really, really, really insipid performance. They were dominated by this Juventus, who are absolutely shit. And now they've got the derby again. So I feel both sets of players are going to be really feeling that pressure. And for once, I'm going to be optimistic and say that we eke out 2-1 victory. I'll give goals to Lautaro and Thuram. And what Inter-Jections episode would be complete without a Leal goal?
I would have to agree. Let's hope that you're right and that I'm right and that we just walk away with 3 points and that Conte doesn't. But I would never ask favors of Roma because they've never done me a favor in my life.
That's very true. All right, well, that was a blast. Love having you on the episodes. Let's get you back on sometime soon. And long may the Australian Interisty rule the world, the highly competitive world of English-speaking Inter Milan content.
Let it happen. And a big shout out to the rest of the crew. Sorry that I couldn't join you at whatever God-forsaken hour it is, wherever you are, but it is what it is. It's good to be able to connect with Jay and at least do this part and contribute any way I can. So, Forza Inter, I can't wait to speak to you again.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks to Anthony for joining Jay for that awesome interview. So if you're still with us, Irfan, I want you to tell me how you're feeling heading into this match. For me, this is a must win just from we have room in the table. I'm not worried about Milan catching us, but I'm just talking from a mentality standpoint. We need this game emotionally if we want to hang with Napoli. If we drop points here, if we lose to Milan for the third time this season, I don't know how we recover from this mentally. So this is a must win for me. How are you approaching this game?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a must win, in my opinion, but I think you framed it well, which is, to me, this match is more about Napoli than it is about Milan. I don't really care about Milan. Look, the thing is, when we have a derby, any derby, like it's gonna be tight. It's gonna be tough. You kind of throw what the teams are doing out of the window. You don't know what to expect. Like it could be one team completely dominating the other. It could be something very close. It could be completely unforeseen and be an upset. Like we've seen enough of these now, even in our recent history, that it's really hard to predict what's going to happen because these are two teams that know each other so well, and the way they approach this game mentally is different from any other sort of match because you're at home or you're away, but you're in the same stadium, and it's a mix of fans, and it's all the stuff that you look at when you think about derby. So I think you throw all that out. The thing that I'm really focused on, I don't care that we've lost 2 matches to them. I don't care if we lose again in the sense of like, oh, we've mentally destroyed, blah, blah. I don't think all of that's really true. But I do think that if we lose to them or if we draw here, like Napoli is not going away. Like they're just not. It's vintage Conti. He's doing the stuff that he always fucking does. And they play one game a week. And even in that game, they don't look particularly good, but they still grind out these results. It's really irritating. And they're not going anywhere. our fixture congestion is going to get out of control, and the games are going to be really, really meaningful for us, right? Like we might have to decide if it's worth going into the next round of the Champions League, or it's worth making sure that we get 3 points in a league match. And Napoli's not dealing with any of that. And so for me, this derby more than anything is kind of perched on in the context of where we are on the table with Napoli. It really does seem like it's a 2-horse race. Whether Milan get 3 points or not is not going to affect kind of our situation with Milan in the table, but it would set us back a lot against Napoli. And so that's my biggest concern, is that we have to figure out a way to keep pace. And when they beat Juventus this last week, it was just like eye-opening to me that we're running out of matches where we can reasonably expect them to drop points. Now, anything can happen. There could be an upset. There could be a draw, anything. But we're running out of those matches, and that's what worries me. So this is very important. I think we got to get 3 points, but I'm more focused on us versus Napoli than I am us versus Milan, even though we're playing Milan.
Some top-tier emotional hedging there for the loss.
Not at all. I expect
I don't
to kill
care
him.
if we lose.
No, but I expect to kill him. I care if we lose, but I care if we lose because we're in a serious race for the Scudetto. We're not trying to get like points on our rivals here, like trying to get like bragging rights over our city counterparts. Like we're in serious business here, right? Like we're trying to win a trophy. These guys have no shot. So yeah.
Well, they are the club in this match who already has a trophy this season. I kid.
Mickey Mouse trophy.
Mikko, when you think about what's gone wrong the last 2 matches where we've conceded these late goals, what do we need to do in this matchup in order to avoid that and to change the result in our favor?
Yeah, the first match, the league match, that was a total disaster back then. It was probably the worst match of Inter for the whole calendar year and for a long time in general. I don't think we are going to see such match. At least I hope. That was like a all in all terrible attitude and like a wrong approach. It had everything of that negative you can come up with. I think the second match we were leading 2-0, and it required this wrong non-call by the ref to get Milan back in the game, get the momentum with the Theo free kick goal, and I think that is kind of the game we need to look for, in a sense that we play our game, and if we play our game for the whole 90 minutes, Milan should have no business getting any kind of result of this match. So I'm looking at the Supercoppa final and just replicate what you did in the first half and try to contain the game within your own hands, and don't let the emotions like run over you. Just try to keep it cool and play as you can, because when we play like we can, Milan is not going to stop us at that point.
Jay, why are my 2 co-podcasters not taking Milan seriously?
Just a simple lack of respect, really. This is a team that has deservedly beat us twice this season. Despite being in moments of vulnerability, they rose to the occasion where we did not. So despite their inconsistencies, they have a arguably more impressive track record in the big games, in the fact that they beat us twice and they beat Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. This is not something to be taken for granted. It means that despite their inconsistencies, they can still hurt anyone, mainly through just the pace and I guess that ability to drag formations out of shape that they have through Liao in particular, And let me put it this way. As I was saying in the interview with Anthony, we've had this opportunity to beat Milan in a vulnerable position before. the first derby was the derby where Fonseca was supposed to get sacked if he lost, but somehow he pulled out a win. Likewise, the second derby in the Supercoppa was Conceição's second game, and so there was a chance for us to like stamp our authority and give him a rude awakening, deny him that honeymoon period, but instead, as mentioned, we gave them a feel good, come from behind victory. So we yet to put we yet to really show them who's boss, and will we do that this time around? I don't know. Hopefully, go out there with a bit of anger, but a controlled anger, and really put the hurt on Milan, because that's what I think this game demands. I was saying in the interview with Anthony that I think it's going to be a cagey affair because both teams will feel the pressure of the occasion. I stand by that, and I'm not expecting a great game, to be honest. I think we'll win, but it's going to be tighter than I think a lot of people are anticipating. And as cliched as it is, the derby is always unpredictable and form goes out the window in the derbies. So, got to keep an eye out for the kind of Leao shenanigans where they can turn the game, at the drop of a hat. They always have that inherent potential through someone like Leao, whereas, we've spoken about this many times, but we need to kind of build attacks as a team to put people in a position to score, whereas Leao can kind of dribble past three people himself and, square the ball for Pulisic to tap into an empty net. It's just the way it goes. Obviously, over the course of a season, the system we have is a much better foundation to have, that kind of tried and tested teamwork and successful tactics that we have is, I wouldn't trade it for what they have, but in a one-off game, which these derbies always seem to be, despite obviously making up a part of the larger season, in a one-off special game like the derby, anything can happen, and sometimes those fine margins are exactly that. I mean, how many times did we, at 2-2 in the Supercoppa derby, how many times did we come close to scoring a third goal, and taking the lead back again, but we didn't, despite their defense kind of like being in tatters. They still managed to hold on, partly through luck, partly through our own failures, and partly through their own determination, I guess, to give them a little bit of credit. And then next thing you know, one long ball to Leao, he just waltzes past three people and then just squares it for Tamidis to fucking tap into an empty net, So that's always the danger with Milan. It's always going to be that way as long as they have this system, as long as they have this set of players. So I don't think you can ever take that for granted.
Mikko, would you start Zielinski or Asllani as regista for this match?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually had the question in my mind that should you guys, or would you guys start Çalhanoğlu if he's available? I just read that Acerbi and Çalhanoğlu both they were like partly taking or they were part of the group session for like a, I don't know, maybe not full session, but like part of it, and it seems that they might actually make it to this match. I'm fairly certain Acerbi won't be starting this match. He's been out for so long. But I wanna hear your thoughts, guys. Would you start Çalhanoğlu if he's like ready to play? So called ready to play.
Yeah, I just saw that too. That he might be, if things keep going as on the right track, then he'll be ready to play. I would start him definitely. Even if he's at 70%, I would try to get as much time out of him as I could, and then I would switch to Zielinski or Asllani. I don't really care. I mean, Hakan, I think, should always be the starter if he's able to be. But let's assume he's not. Then I don't know. Between those two, I honestly don't know, because I don't think Zielinski plays that role particularly well. But Asllani had a pretty bad match against Milan last time. So do you really trust the kid to go out there and, correct and remedy what he did last time? You'd love to see them give him a chance to do that, but then it's too important of a match where, unless he shows like some real willingness and Inzaghi really trusts him, I might go with Zielinski in this match instead. But I don't know. It's a tough call. Hopefully Hakan is ready and he plays.
What about others? What would you do, Andrea?
Yeah, Irfan said it well. If Hakan is available, you play Hakan. No ifs, ands, or buts. Doesn't matter if he can give you 45 minutes, 60 minutes. You take whatever you can get to avoid having to play Aslani for an extended period of time in just a critical match like this. I'm not trying to be a troll or anything, but Hakan gives us our best chance of winning. There's really no doubting that. So if he's available, he plays. Acerbi, absolutely not. Would not play. I don't care about De Vrij's past history with Milan. I will take De Vrij's current form, where he has arguably been our best defender for the past month, and I will trust him rather than bring in a 37-year-old ice cold off the bench. And if we're winning late, maybe we put on Acerbi to clamp down the lead since we keep conceding late goals to Milan. But yeah, I would definitely start De Vrij.
What about you, Jay? Would you, let's say, Çalhanoğlu is not ready or he's ready for 60 minutes? What would you do with Zielinski versus Aslani?
Yeah, so I spoke about this during the interview with Anthony, and we both went for Zielinski. Just that experience, even if he's not been particularly a standout in the Regista role, there's been enough evidence of his inherent understanding of the game and his just sheer skill and class that it's enough to kind of get by, I think, So he's not exactly, setting the world alight with his performances in any position, really. But regardless of that, like I said, he's got the head for it. 2 penalties against Juve is not an easy thing to do. He's got the big game mentality. He's got the experience. He's got the composure. And I think this is going to be critical. But if Hakan is available even to play an hour, then yeah, absolutely Hakan should start.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about this, maybe what I would do, if you knew you only had Hakan for 45 minutes or 60 minutes, I might start with either Zielinski or Aslani and then save Hakan for like the last half, because Milan seem to have this strategy that they'll bring on some, whether it's Lau last time or whoever they bring on, like they seem to like really get at us when we're tired, and they put some speed and some flair at the end, and when we're like physically exhausted. That's been the MO for like the last kind of 2 matches we've played against Milan. So if we're going to play our best lineup, I'd rather have our best lineup out there for like the last kind of 30 to 45 minutes, because that's when Milan seem to wake up and make a push, not just against us but pretty much against everybody. So if Hakan is only available for 45 minutes, I'd rather start the first half with Zielinski or Aslani and then put Hakan in at halftime and let him close out the match for us.
That's an interesting take. That's part of like the kind of the game management, or not the game management, but more like the plan for the game. Like what's the plan for the whole 90 minutes? I think it's been widely talked how Inzaghi seems to be a guy who has like programmed his subs already before the kickoff, but you would suggest like even more planned, in a sense that you would bring Çalhanoğlu in already in the halftime if he's not ready to start. That's an interesting take for sure.
Yeah, in the words of a former not so great Republican president of the U.S., it's fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, and struggle, and then fool me, can't get fooled again. It's kind of like that, right? Like if Milan have done this to us twice, I'm making sure, if I'm Inzaghi, that they're not doing this again. So even if we go into the last 30 minutes 0-0, the last thing I want is to be able to give Milan a goal again late. And so if I need to put in Hakan and save him for the end, rather than bringing in, Aslani or somebody else at the end where we're kind of running on fumes, I would rather do that.
Usually it's not just Aslani in, it's usually Barella out and Frattesi in as well. So it's the...
Yeah, and DeMarco Bastoni are usually gone by then. I don't want to leave it to that again. I feel like that's our one kryptonite. Like when we're playing with our kind of full team when we start the match, I feel like we're in pretty good control, regardless of who we're playing. It's later on when we get tired, when we start making these substitutions, where we start to get into trouble, especially if the other side has pacey, tricky players that they can bring on. So I don't know. You got to somehow account for that. And if Oak Tree is not giving you the personnel that you need to be able to sub in to end these matches. Some defensive midfielder or some strength in the back. If Oak Tree's not giving you that personnel, then you got to figure out a way to deal with it, I guess, with the personnel you have.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of housekeeping items just from lineup standpoint. So Fofana suspended for Milan. Milan did play and lose yesterday in the Champions League. They pretty much rolled out a full-strength team, so they shouldn't have any advantage over us from a rest standpoint. They were going for the win yesterday, came up short. So we're both working with the same rest period here. And there's talks, I'm seeing reports that Kyle Walker might make his debut as a starter for Milan. So something to keep an eye on. Mikko, what's your prediction for this match?
Yeah, the last prediction of the draw against Monaco, that was a garbage, obviously. I'm gonna be more optimistic now, and we're gonna win 2-0. Goals by Thuram and Lautaro.
Irfan?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna go 3-0. I think we completely trashed them. And I'm gonna go with 2 goals from Lautaro, and I'm gonna give the third goal to De Vrij.
I thought you were gonna fucking do it again.
No, I'm being serious, Jay. This is a serious podcast with a serious prediction of a 3-goal win for Inter.
I gave my prediction in the interview with Anthony. I'm standing by it, as I said. 2-1 for us, goals from Lautaro and Thuram, and 1 for Leao, obviously. And I really do think that this is going to be a really tight and difficult game. I don't think it's going to be a enjoyable experience until it's over. It's going to be nerve-wracking. And as mentioned, both teams are under some degree of pressure. We're under expectation of avenging these 2 losses and obviously being far ahead in the table, fighting for a Scudetto, needing to keep pace with Napoli, currently 3 points behind with a game in hand, coming off a big win in the Champions League. So we've got the bonus of not having to play the playoff games, all that kind of stuff in our favour. It adds the weight of expectation upon the players' shoulders. Milan, on the other hand, somewhat of a free hit, but I think that works in their favour. But obviously there's pressure on their shoulders as well because they're coming off quite a disappointing loss, and now they have to deal with the inconvenience of playing 2 more playoff games. Like I said earlier, it's a cliche, but yeah, form really does go out the window in a derby, and in these one-off games, anything can happen. So let's say 2-1.
I'm going with a balls to the walls 4-2 Inter victory. I haven't seen enough from either of these teams that shows me they can stop the other team when they play each other. The games have been open. The games have been high scoring. There's just too many chances on both ends. Lautaro's in form. That's going to make all the difference. We'll win 4-2. All right. Well, my dog wants to go for a walk, so we got to wrap this up. We're going to get out of here. Thanks again to Anthony for taking the time to talk with Jay, give us a great preview of this derby. Mikko, take us away.
Yeah, Forza Inter and catch you up later.
Okay, see you.